Hi guys, I wanted to come to you today. First of all, I'm going to begin with an apology. I did not know that my videos were not working. I apologize for that. Um, not Facebook, YouTube had um, suspended my account pending further verification of the videos. I have remedied what was causing that problem, so hopefully it will not happen again, but I will be diligent about checking the video um, after, a few days after it's posted. Also be more diligent in checking my email. I was out of town for a couple of days. I had responded to some emails on Thursday, Thursday. And then when I logged back in on Monday, I saw that I was inundated with emails. Many of you concerned about the videos for the last two sessions not being posted. So I apologize for that. Um, I will try to work on that, be more diligent about that. And I believe I've caught up on all my emails with you. If I haven't, then please do email me again. Sometimes I'm not able to check them on Saturday and Sunday. It's the nature of my real job, if you will. And so I will try to be more diligent and check those at least once on the weekends. Um, uh, Also, what you were supposed to have your second reflection paper due today. I moved that date back to next week. That gives you an extra few days to get that done. Um, that way, you've had time to digest your grade. Several of you had emailed me about that. Um, I generally don't allow rewrites. That's why one reflection paper is only worth a maximum of 5 points of your total grade. And the lowest anyone got on that was a 3.3 out of 5. Um, so as long as you do a little bit better on the next reflection paper, and I'm really asking you to push deep on this. Explore a topic as broadly as you can. Think about all the implications of the topic as even if you have to say, I'm ruling out this, this, and this. I'm not going to talk about X, Y, Z. I'm going to talk about A. I could even talk about B and C. That lets me know that you really looked at all of those um, possible topics related to what it is that you're going to say. And then you can focus in on one aspect of that. Um, but, just giving me a broad topic, and what I need you to do is to say, in this broad topic, we could go in these directions. Here's how it's an ethical, here's how it's a moral and social issue, and then focus in then on that. So even excluding other things is perfectly fine. It lets me know that you considered some of the other ways that is thought about, or that someone might gather around and talk about that topic. Um, I guess what I'm saying is let me know that you thought about the possible tangents of the topic and that you have decided on focusing on one little aspect. The other thing that I've done, so what I did is I went into Canvas and I changed the way the grade will be posted. When I told you I gave you a 3.5 out of 5, that was what was showing up. Even on yours, it would show a 3.5 out of 5, but then it was giving you a percentage. Um, so what I did is I changed the way that would be posted so that it would be clear to you how I am accounting for each one of your papers. Therefore, you should be able now to see exactly what it is that you've got on your paper and how it will be calculated and accounted for. Now, I just wanted to say another word that I'm recording my lectures now on Zoom so that if I need to pause them, I can do that. I'm not as happy with the quality of it as I was recording it in a different format, but hopefully it's coming across good enough for you. There's a little bit more I wanted to say about capital punishment. Last week I tried to help you trace the history of some of our race relations in this country and to bring those into a context of talking about capital punishment and how there is definitely a racial disparity when we talk about the application of the death penalty. So I hope you were able to watch the videos that I had posted. Certainly you have all week to do that. Some of the other points that I wanted to make about it, it is not just that there's a racial disparity in the way that the death penalty is applied. There seems to be a racial disparity in the way that the application of the law is done, generally speaking. Just something I'd like you to think about and explore in your own personal reflection time and things like that. Now, I want to begin to move us in the direction of thinking about some other topics, not directly related to justice per se, but still within that first section of topics. And I'm probably not going to successfully get to all of them. My foot is tangled up here. There we go. Just trying to. So I'm probably not going to get to everything that's on that first section. But I do want to just begin to scratch the surface on some of these topics to help you think about them. And so already getting a little bit behind, but I typically plan the syllabus in such a way that it's okay because I plan in an extra day or two in case we do get behind. So I want to begin to branch out of that and talk about something that's going on in our culture right now. And that has to do with wearing masks and vaccines. Now, if we approach this topic, this is a current, meaning now, social and moral issues. So if we approach this topic as an moral dilemma, what do we do about masks? And what should we do about vaccines? Now, I want you to lay aside for a moment anything that you've read about the dangers of vaccines. Just lay that aside for a moment. Let's just look at what masks and vaccines purport to do. Let's take the mask. I've got one handy here. So let's just take the mask. This is one that I received a marketing one from Covenant House. So let's talk about them for just a moment. What does a mask do? A mask is intended not to protect me. This is how, now we know they've done studies to show that there is some benefit to me wearing the mask. But the primary benefit for me wearing the mask is to you, because we know that you can be asymptomatic. That means you're not necessarily showing symptoms, but you could be a carrier of the current coronavirus that we know commonly as COVID-19. So even though you're asymptomatic, you could be contagious. Someone could contract the disease from you. Me, let me just put it in terms of that. So even though I feel fine, I'm healthy. In fact, I couldn't run this morning because of the rain. So I went this afternoon, got an 8-mile run in, feel great. So things are hunky-dory, things are great. But I've been in contact with someone, let's just say my mother-in-law. She's older. I purchased her provisions for the week, her groceries. I dropped them off to her. I spent some time there doing some other things around her place. And because she has been to the doctor a lot, she picked it up. She's in the early stages, not having a lot of symptoms herself, but she is contagious enough that she passed it on. She could pass the virus on to me, even though I am not symptomatic. Or let's just say she was sick and I was around her. And it's on me, but I'm not symptomatic. It's in me, but I'm not symptomatic. The point of the mask is that if I have that virus inside of me, I'm less likely, you can't say it's 100%. We know it's not 100%. But I'm less likely to breathe on you directly, either through my nose. By the way, guys, this is not the right way to wear it. Yeah, the nose is still connected to the lungs, and the lungs is where the virus resides. I am less likely then to pass it along to you if I'm wearing my mask. That's the whole point of it. Now, it does provide some protection for me. It does filter the air a little bit. You know, if I'm in an environment, we know that it does help with that as well. They've done some studies. So if I were going to apply one of the ethical theories that we talked about in the beginning, remember, we talked about the utilitarianism. We talked about Kantianism, the categorical imperative. Remember all of those? So if you were going to apply that, one of those theories, which one do you think would apply best? So let's look at those and think about which one we might argue for. So let's look at consequentialism. Let's think about egoism. What's in it for me? So the consequences, what's in it for me? So what's in it for me if I wear a mask? Is there anything that I get out of doing that? You might argue no. However, if you're in contact, for example, with family members, you would want to wear a mask, right? Because you would not want to share that. You would not, if you're If you're a carrier, you would not want to share that with them. But that's not really applying egoism, because you can't really say what's in it for me to wear a mask. In this case, I would much more look at if I were using a consequentialist approach, I would use the principle of utility. What is the greatest good for the number of people, for the greatest number of people? And so from the principle of utility, wearing a mask makes the most sense. Because even though it's a sacrifice that I am making to wear the mask, in doing so, I am helping the greatest number of people. I'm increasing the chances, or decreasing the chances, I guess I should say, of others contracting that if I am an unsuspecting carrier, if I'm an asymptomatic carrier. So from a consequentialist point of view, egoism would not really be the way to approach it, but utility would be the way to approach wearing a mask. Well, what about from a non-consequentialist, a deontological approach? Remember, the consequentialism is teleological. So a non-consequentialist, a deontological approach. Divine command. I actually heard, I was watching some people argue about whether or not to wear masks. And they said that God didn't intend us to wear masks, to cover our nose, cover our mouths. Well, that argument doesn't really hold up, because, God didn't make you with a mask, but also God didn't make you with shoes. For that matter, God didn't make you with clothes. God didn't make me with glasses. So the argument, if you're going to say, well, God never intended us to wear a mask, it doesn't really hold up. It's not entirely consistent, is it? Because following that logic, to not wear a mask because God didn't want it, well, take off your shoes, go without your clothes. Please don't. But I hope you follow the logic of that. And natural law, one could argue, well, that really doesn't apply either, because as humans, we have evolved. The apes don't wear clothes. So the same arguments would apply. But what about the categorical imperative? I should never act in such a way except I would want my action to become a universal law. Act only in ways that I would want my actions to become universal laws. So let's think about that for a moment in regard to wearing a mask. Now, if I knew that you were, let me think of how to argue this. So if you knew that you were symptomatic, I would want you to wear a mask, and vice versa. I would want to make it a universal law that if there is a chance that you are carrying the virus, you should be wearing a mask. And knowing statistically that any one of us could be a carrier and not know it, then therefore we should wear a mask. We ought to wear a mask. So I think you can make a categorical imperative saying, yes, everyone should wear masks, because there is a chance that you could be a carrier even though you're asymptomatic. So if the categorical imperative says, act only in such a way that you would want your action to become a universal law. You would have to apply that to any other possible disease, TB, measles, the mumps, HIV. Now, we're not talking about a mask there, right? But we are talking about protection in other ways, right? If you know someone or there's a chance someone has HIV or AIDS, to have unprotected sex would put them at risk. So you ought to always then practice safe sex. That's the same argument then for wearing a mask. If you don't know that, with 100% certainty, if you cannot 100% certainty trust your sexual partner, then you should use protection. This is not about pregnancy. This is about disease. Because, the old saying is you're sleeping with everybody they've slept with. And so therefore, you should wear protection. It should be a universal law then. You should act only in such a way that you would want that to be a universal law. Same thing applies to wearing a mask. So what about vaccines? What about vaccines? Do those same arguments then hold up for vaccines? Would you say then that there is a consequentialist argument using utility? Could you say that there's a deontological argument using the categorical imperative to wear a mask? This question is your discussion. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a discussion asking you to respond to this, but you're going to have had to watch the video this far in order to get the question. Yeah, this is a test to see if you're actually watching the video lecture. But let's begin to broaden this out. What are we actually talking about here when we're talking about these topics, when we're talking about masks and vaccines? Should there be then laws about this? Because there are about vaccines. In some instances, you can't enroll your child in school, I believe. You have to have a doctor's note that you're asking for an exception. I actually running a school. And, if somebody wanted to enroll without, it was a preschool, if somebody wanted to enroll without vaccines, we had a rule. No. So what we're talking about here goes under several terms. There are several terms here that I think it would be good for us to begin to think about with regard to this. And let me give you some of those terms just so that we can, so that I can begin to use them. In one sense, we're talking about paternalism versus autonomy. Now, paternalism, this is also when we get to talk about medical ethics, this is one of the terms that we'll use as well. Paternalism, it has that root in their parent, and that's the intention of the word. Paternalism is talking about when someone acts as a parent would act toward a child. That is telling them how they ought to behave. So let me give you an example of this. You might not want to wear a seatbelt, but the state of New Jersey, we'll just use Governor Murphy as the person we're going to talk about. Governor Murphy is your parent in this situation. Governor Murphy has said, you will wear a seatbelt, young lady, young man, or you will not drive on our state roads. You want to have a private road on your own property and you don't want to wear a seatbelt, more power to you. But when it comes to our state roads, you will wear a seatbelt. Now, moreover, your auto insurance probably asks you, do you wear a seatbelt? At least it used to. I don't know if it still does. Are you a seatbelt user? But you might say, I don't want to wear a seatbelt. I don't want the government telling me what I ought to do. That doesn't feel right to me. Okay. Then what you're arguing then is the opposite of paternalism. You're arguing for your own autonomy. You're taking a libertarian approach. You're saying that my freedom, my liberty outweighs and is more important than the paternalistic dictates of the state. My personal freedom is more important than the responsibility to wear a seatbelt. Now think about it, seatbelts. We say seatbelts save lives. It's my life we're talking about. Why can't I just get in my car and go on my merry way? Who am I harming if I don't wear a seatbelt? Well, some would venture to say that, yeah, that is true. But what we know is that if you get in an accident through no fault of your own, you should be protected. And the state has stepped in and said, we're going to exercise a certain amount of paternalism over you. Now, here, what we're talking about, when we adhere to such paternalistic rules, what we're talking about is responsibility versus risk. You're willing to take the risk. That's what we're talking about with autonomy, with libertarianism. You're willing to take a certain amount of risk. The government says, Governor Murphy says, you have a responsibility that if you're going to drive on our roads, to adhere to our laws, and one of those laws is that you wear a seatbelt. So here, I've thrown out some terms for you, and I want to just review them. Paternalism. Paternalism is when some authority, this could be a doctor making decisions for you. This could be your parent, as in paternalism. This could be the state or federal government, somehow a governmental authority. This could be the laws of some organization to which you belong. They would say you have certain responsibilities if you're going to operate within certain realms, certain places. So that's another term to throw out there, responsibility. Versus autonomy or libertarianism, or the willingness to take certain risks. So when we're talking about vaccines and masks, we're talking about responsibility versus risk, rights versus responsibility versus risk. Paternalism, the state saying to you, you should do this, versus your liberty, your autonomy. Now, I'm going to stop this part of the lecture right now. There will be another part. This is only about 30 minutes of this lecture. There will be another part of it because I want to get to a couple of aspects of this, but I want to get this uploaded so you can begin to watch it. All right.